Good day to all budding journalists of Surigao del Sur. Today, I'm going to discuss to you one of the most exciting writing events in the history of journalism. This is specifically sports writing or writing the sports story. I am Dr. Fluellen of Carrascal National High School. Again, a pleasant day to the teacher advisors, to the writers, and to everybody who's tuning in DepEd Tayo, Surigao del Sur. Today, our objectives are define sports writing. We will also discuss the salient points on writing the sports story. Appreciate the contributions of sports writers in the field of journalism through sports articles. What is sports writing? You know, my dear students and my dear advisors, sports writing is a form of journalism or creative nonfiction in which a sporting event, individual athlete, or sports-related issue serves as the dominant subject. A journalist who reports on sports is a sports writer. Of course, to those who are very interested in looking or viewing sports events and writing them down are called sports writers. This is a very, very special event in journalism because the writer must be very, very keen in looking at the different activities or the different movements of the athletes or the games he or she is trying to view, and after which the writer will relay these things to the reader or even the viewer if you're dealing with broadcasting. What are the requirements of sports writing? First, the viewer or the writer or the journalist, the sports journalist, must know the rules of the game, the rules of the game. We have to be well-versed in strategies and tactics, as well as team and individual records of competing teams. Meaning to say, looking at a certain sports event or a certain sports activity, the viewer or the sports writer must understand how the game is being played, how it is being scored, how it is being looked upon by the technical aspects, since these technicalities will be written by the sports writer. I was trying to say well-versed in the strategies and tactics. So therefore, analytical things or analytical episodes must be present in the mindset of the writer. As much as possible, the sports writer follow teams during practice. See, sinabi ko kanina na aside from looking at the rules of the game, dapat ring tinitingnan mo ang mga teams during practice, hindi lang sa laro na. So pinupuntahan mo ang mga iba't ibang team na magkukumpit and you are going to look into how they practice, how is the teamwork of these teams, how the coach is motivating the different teams for you to be able to write the technicalities and also some of the things that the reader or the listener or even the viewer would like to know. You also have to develop the ability to detect the weaknesses or strength of a team or an individual player. As much as possible, as you are following the teams during the practice, you also have to understand how the athletes and the players are looking or doing into the game. The weaknesses must be detected or even the strength of the team so that the color or the vibrance of the article that you're going to write is going to be present in the copy or in the presentation that you're going to depict through different platforms. So if you're delivering that on TV, if you're delivering that on paper or print, or if you're delivering that on radio. So later, the sports writer must also be able to understand the technicality of how to write a printed sports article, how to write something which is going to be utilized by radio-based instruction, and also it should be understood how to deliver these stories into platforms like TV. So a separate event or a separate discussion is going to be given to you for radio broadcasting and TV broadcasting. Aside from that, you also have to know the coaches and players as much as possible. Aside from knowing the names of the players, aside from knowing the names of the coaches, you need to understand how these coaches strategize, how the players work together, how the players' regimen affect their movements and their play or how they do their games. So therefore, as much as possible, understand who is coaching this particular team. The players as well, you must have a background of them for you to be able to understand how he kills the cat if he's going to do the game. Aside from that, it is also a requirement to observe accurately. I was mentioning a while ago that keen observation must be given to the games, the athletes, the coaches, and even the environment of the play. No? The ecology of the game must be understood by the sports writer for you to be able to develop a very good copy, a very interesting article, a very interesting sports news, or even sports feature. Then, you need to be able to take notes quickly without losing the sequence of the play. Hindi naman pwedeng sasabihin mo na stop muna kasi nagsusulat pa ako. Hindi naman pwedeng i-stop natin ang isang laro para lang ma-accommodate tayo para maisulat kung ano yung nangyayari sa laro. Kaya, ang isang sports writer ay kailangan mabilis kapag mag-take down ng notes. You know, these notes must be taken carefully kasi qualitative data siya, di ba? Ang isang journalist ay kumukuha ng data. So itong qualitative data, itong notes na kinukuha natin based on the observation that we have must be factual. Dapat hanay siya or tumpak siya sa katotohanan. Kasi hindi pwede nating ilahad sa ating mga manonood, mambabasa o nakikinig ang mga bagay na hindi totoo. Again, uulitin ko, you have to take notes quickly without losing the sequence of the play and without compromising the facts. Another requirement for sports writing, you need to be fair and unbiased. Even if you have personal favorites, you should maintain your objectivity all the times. So therefore, even if you like a certain team and this particular team is winning, the copy or the article that you're writing must not have a hint of bias. Ibig sabihin, no, I'm going to translate that in Filipino, wala kang kinikilingan kasi reporter ka. Inilalahad mo lang ang nangyari sa laro na iyon. Kahit gustong-gusto mo, halimbawa kung PBA, kung meron kang isang kupunan na parang type mo talaga siya, ay hindi mo pwedeng bibigyan ng opinion kung bakit gustong-gusto mo yung kupunan na iyon. No, kailangan mong isulat kung ano lang yung nangyari. So you have to be fair in looking at the game and there must be no bias in your reporting. Now, if you're going to write a sports feature, sometimes you are giving opinions, no? If you're a sportscaster, if you're a sports writer, rather, there are instances that you're going to add opinions specifically on your observations. Halimbawa, meron kang mga na-record before tungkol sa mga strategiya ng mga atleta. And then, yung mga strategiya na iyon ay hindi na ipakita during the actual game. Sa tingin mo, yun ang nakapag-weak, no, sa kupunan nila. So, pwede mong isulat yun na napanood mo sila during practice at meron silang mga strategiya na hindi nila na-apply sa real game. So, with this case, parang nag-integrate ka ng opinion sa copy mo or sa article mo. But by these things, you need to support this by facts. Ibig sabihin, yung mga notes mo na ginawa before, no, na sinulat mo yung mga observations mo, ay dapat ilahad mo iyon. Because again, sinabi ko kanina, yung qualitative data na nakuha mo doon ay factual naman. Okay? So, for the 9th requirement of sports writing, you need to use the specialized language of the game being reported, but take care not to be stilted. Later, I will be discussing to you how important sports lingo is. Hindi kasi pwedeng i-mix and match natin ang mga lingo or language or terminologies that we are going to use on a certain game. Halimbawa, hindi ka naman pwedeng mag-jab during a basketball game, di ba? Masyadong delikado yan kapag pinapunch mo yung mga kasamahan mo during tennis. Kasi ang punch at ang jab ay ginagawa mo lang yan during boxing. Hindi ka naman mag-spike during the time na nag-swim ka. Kasi yung word na spike ay ginagamit mo lang yan sa volleyball. So there are terminologies na hindi mo dapat gagamitin sa ibang mga laro. Kaya, you have to use specialized language of the game. Meaning, you have to be well-versed in the sports lingo because without that, your copy, your article, your TV broadcast would never be as colorful as it is kapag walang sports lingo na ginagamit natin. Okay, those are some of the requirements of writing a sports story. Now, we segue into the discussion on the different types of sports stories. Ano ba ang mga iba't ibang uri ng sports stories? Number 1, meron tayong tinatawag na cover story. Ano ba itong cover story? This is a report on the outcome of the game, how it was played, including highlights of the game. Okay, mag-story muna tayo. Nung school paper advisor pa ako, I was able to tell my sports writers to perform cover story. Ano ba to? Yung play-by-play story. Paano ba nilaro yung laro na iyon? So, ibig sabihin, halimbawa kung basketball, anong nangyari during the first quarter, during the second quarter, third quarter, and during the final quarter? Ibig sabihin, ano bang mga highlights doon? Bawat quarter. Dapat ipakita yan ng isang writer, ng isang sports writer. So that is what we call as a cover story. So ano bang kinalabasan ng laro na iyon at bawat parte ng laro na iyon, ano bang mga highlights, ano bang mga sidelights, because these are interesting to the readers, no? Meron namang nananalo ng mga sports writers ko. Where in fact, 2 of my writers before won in the national event. When I was in Carrascal National High School and I was still a teacher in Carrascal National High School, and when I segued to become a coach and a principal in Cantilan High, we won 2nd place in sports writing in Naga. And it was a girl who was a writer on that time. Okay? So therefore, cover story is a story in the sports event when you are going to write the outcome and how the play was being done during the different parts of the game. Okay, halimbawa, kung softball yan, bawat inning, ano bang pinapakita mo? Okay, so sa swimming na, sa isang track and field na part, so in every minute, in every second of the game, kailan ba nadapa yung isang athlete? No? Kailangan mong maisulat yan so that this cover story would allow the reader to understand the entirety of the game. Yun bang parang dinala mo na siya doon sa kung saan nangyari ang laro? Yun bang parang ang nitty-gritty ng mga events na, rather the event ay inilahad mo. So yan ang number 1 type of sports story. That is the cover story. Okay. So, the structure of that is similar to what the straight news is being presented, no? As you could see on your screen, there is what we call as an inverted pyramid. No, ano ba tong pyramid? Kung makikita natin ang pyramid, nakatayo siya na ang foundation niya ay masyadong malapad, no? At tapos meron siyang triangular shape at paano siya? Patatsulok nga, no? Parang paigsi hanggang sa point ng pyramid. But in the inverted one, parang it was flipped. Yung foundation niya, doon na sa taas at yung maliit, dito na sa baba. Bakit ganyan ang pagkalahad ng isang straight sports story? Kasi ang most newsworthy information ay nasa pinaka-start ng storya mo. The who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how, the 5 W's and 1 H is being presented in the lead or on the first part or the first paragraph of your story. And then the body of the sports story is going to be what we call as the important details. Ano bang nangyari? Ano bang mga detalye ng laro na iyon? And then, we also have other general information and background information na maipakita natin doon sa pinakababa ng ating istorya. So yan ang tinatawag nating the other supplemental activities or supplemental events na nangyari sa isang laro. Okay? So ulitin ko, ang structure ng isang sports story na yung cover story, yung pinakamaganda at pinakamananalo kapag merong contest na ating i-attend ay ang inverted pyramid positioning of the different facts. Okay, so the conventional sports stories follow the structure of a straight news. The inverted pyramid, which means the facts are presented from the most important to least important. However, sports news is different in a sense that it uses special vocabulary which throbs with action. Creativity and imagination are employed in describing the action. Uulitin natin to, no? Iba ang news story. Ang news story kasi ay parang flat, walang lasa. But the straight sports story has that sense of being there. No, parang andoon ka talaga sa laro na iyon. That's why it uses a special vocabulary which throbs with action. No, mag-digress muna ako. Every time that we judge in the division press conference or even in the regional schools press conference, we always have these jokes na mababasa na naman natin ang nailampaso, mababasa naman natin ang kumain ng alikabok, mababasa naman natin ang mga bagay na umani ng suntok. These things are special vocabulary. No? We use idioms, sports idioms, for us to be able to make the story throb with action. So yan ang kaibahan ng isang sports story. No? Meron tayong vocabulary na kakaiba sa iba. Okay? So this is what we call as using the inverted pyramid, but still, we need to grab the collar of the listener or the viewer for us to be able to lead them towards a certain direction. And that direction is how the game is being played properly. Okay. So nakikita ninyo ngayon sa screen ninyo ang ating structure ng sports story. No? As you could see, the first part of the sports story is the headline. So, and the second part is the lead. Ngayon, ano ba ang part ng lead? Ano ba ang andoon sa lead? Kanina I mentioned about the 5 W's and 1 H, no? And in these times, we also have to understand that the lead has the key play. We also have the outstanding player. We also have the analytical approach. Ibig sabihin, ang mga bagay na ito ay nakikita natin on the first paragraph of the sports news or the lead. So the body, we have the highlights of the game, the decisive play. Saan ba nakapag-decide tayo na parang kung sino na yung nananalo? Yung play-by-play, yung sinasabi ko kanina na ano bang mga highlights during the different parts of the game. Comparison of the teams, di ba? Parang requirement sa isang writer na you have to look into the different teams prior to the game kasi meron kang dapat observations. So another one is best score of the day. Okay? So you could mention in the body the best score of the day. The quotation, you need to interview the players after the game or even the coaches or even the viewers, no? So, yun yung ginagawa natin palagi sa sports stories, no? Pumupunta tayo sa mga atleta, tinatanong natin ano bang mga estratehiya nila, ano bang mga sikreto nila na pwede nilang i-share sa atin, bakit sila nanalo. Pwede rin nating puntahan ang mga talunan, bakit ba nagkaganoon, lalo na kapag yung natalo ay champion before, what went wrong. We also have to discuss what went well for us to be able to present a very good news story, no? Specifically coming from the direct quote. So, i-quote natin ang mga coach. So, ang coach naman, halimbawa, sasabihin natin na, Coach, ito bang outcome ng sports ay na expect ninyo or meron na project na ba ninyo ang kahinatnan ng bagay na ito? So, the direct quote of that coach could add color to the story of your sports story. Also, weather condition plays a great part in writing the sports story. An example to that, if you're going to write a football story, no, and this is an open field game, paano kung biglang uulan or paano kung masyadong mainit? Okay, so these are things that we could add to the story kasi there are instances that the weather could affect the performance of the athletes. No? Halimbawa, track and field at tumatakbo yung mga atleta and the track is very muddy, no? Nag-slide sila at merong na-injure because of this situation. So this could be a very, very interesting part in the body of your sports news. Okay, another one is crowd and celebration, no? Dumadagundong or parang thunderstorm ang applause na nangyari sa Coliseum nang naganap ang ganito. So, yung crowd and celebration could be presented in your story kasi sinabi ko na kanina that the story must throb with action. Okay? So therefore, kailangan nating ipakita ang mga bagay-bagay na ito. Ganon din kapag boring ang isang game, no? Quiet, tahimik, o parang maririnig mo ang isang karayom kapag nahuhulog dahil sa silence ng crowd, parang ganyan, no? So by doing so, there is going to be a projection that probably it's very exciting or it's going to be boring. It depends upon how the writer is going to present the sports story. Okay, you could see on the screen now that I am presenting a sports page. And you could see on the sports page na ang ipinakita ng photojournalist ay isang full of action na game, no? Therefore, ang dapat na ilagay ng isang photojournalist sa sports section ay isang in-action na sports or in-action na event. Hindi dapat parang firing squad or whatever, nagmimedalya or whatever. No, dapat action na iyon. Even during the Olympics, nakikita natin to. Okay? Now, look at the headline. Men of a certain rage. Okay? Can you just imagine that? Men of a certain rage. Rage is a very, very intense emotion. Parang ano yan? Parang anger. No? Parang anger na masyadong masidhi. So bakit ba isinulat to ng isang writer? Bakit ba ganyan ang kanyang headline? Because he'd like or she'd like this particular story to be attractive. No? Parang makuha na kaagad. So therefore, nakikita sa picture and even sa headline na puno ng sidhi ang laro na iyon. Okay? So this is a sample of a headline and a photo presented by the writers for us to be able to feel the story or the sports story. Okay, now, I was talking about the lead. So how are we going to write the lead of a sports story? The traditional sports lead consists of 5 W's and 1 H. Sinabi ko na yan kanina. It may play up with any of the following features. Number 1, significance of the game. Bakit ba ginawa ang laro na iyon? Ano bang kahalagahan nito? What is the point of holding this game? An example, no? If we're going to have the Special Olympics, yung mga Olympics ng mga persons with special needs, no? Ano bang kahalagahan ng mga sports events na ito? Is it because we'd like these people not to be marginalized? Itong mga tao na may mga special needs, halimbawa yung naka-wheelchair, pero naglalaro rin sila ng basketball. Bakit ba ginagawa ito? Ano bang significance ng event na ito? So by allowing the reader to understand that these are human beings as well, and they also have the right to play and to express themselves with their sports skills, so mailahad natin yan in terms of significance of the game. Number 2, spectacular play. Paano natin isulat ang isang activity na may spectacular play? Ang lead pala na may spectacular play. Pinakita na natin kaagad kung gaano kaganda ang ipinakita ng mga atleta. Okay. So, an example to that is dance sports. No, kung nakikita natin na ang mga atleta na sumasayaw sila na all the movements, all the intricate movements were already shown during the starting point of their cha-cha or the starting point of their waltz. Nakikita na yan through the spectacle that they have presented, no, the way they carry themselves, yung costume nila na may mga glitters and etc. It is very spectacular. So maipakita natin yan sa lead na parang ilahad natin sa ating mga mambabasa o sa ating manunood kung gaano kaganda ang ipinakita ng ating mga atleta. And that is one of the most interesting parts. So therefore, the reader or the listener or the viewer could automatically be attracted to the lead. Okay? Once you are going to attract the reader, there is a tendency that you could hold that particular person's attention towards the different parts of your sports story. Okay. Aside from that, we also have hero of the game. Sino ba ang pinaka-MVP? Or kung hindi man siya MVP, ano bang nagawa niya na nagiging champion sila? Okay? An example to that, no, lalo na yung isang human interest na story na merong tinatawag nating bangko na player, all of a sudden nang inilagay siya sa action at siya pa ang nakapanalo sa kanilang kupunan. So that is what of one of the things na parang hero siya sa kanilang team. So by doing so, the hero of the game is also one of the most important things to be present in the sports lead. Aside from that, we could also write unusual circumstance. An example to that, no, there was a story na hindi nakita ng mga guards na nakapasok pala ang isang aso. No, nakapasok pala ang isang aso ng isang athlete na naglalaro doon sa field. It was a track and field event, no? Habang naglalaro ang kanyang amo, nakita ng aso na nagtakbo yung kanyang amo. So with that, the dog jumped out of his place and ran together with the person that looked into him. No, parang nakikita natin na tumatakbo ang atleta and then tumatakbo rin din yung aso na iyon. So by doing so, we were able to catch the interest of the viewers or the listeners. So that is an unusual circumstance. Okay, another is human interest. When we say human interest, this is an interesting thing that could catch the attention of the viewer. Alam niyo yung sinasabi nating viral videos, no, in the social media. These are things which has interest from the people viewing that particular video. Siguro natatawa sila, meron ding mga bagay na parang interesado sila, bakit nangyari iyon, kakaiba ang presentation at naantig ang puso ng mga tao. So these are what we call as human interest activities. Okay? So, isang bagay yan na pwedeng maisulat natin sa ating tinatawag na sports league. Okay, so if I'm going to recap, what are the things aside from the 5 Ws and 1 H, we need to look into the significance of the game and the spectacle of the play, the hero of the game, unusual circumstance, and human interest. These are the things that we need to understand. Now, I'd like to show you a classic 5 Ws lead. No, it answers the who won, against whom, by what score, where, when, and how. The 5 Ws and 1 H. Okay, let us look at this example. The first example is SKSU poured 10 baskets in the last 3 minutes to edge out the SMIT 65-63 at the opponent's home ground yesterday afternoon. So if you're going to look at this particular lead or particular paragraph, you would be able to see the who won, the who, against whom, by what score, where, when, and how. Okay, another example, which is presented on your screen. The Philippines fought with steel nerves and refused to be crushed by a giant's 55 points might be to rip favored North Korea 97-96 in its biggest triumph yesterday in the Asian basketball tournament. If you could see, we are now using specialized vocabulary. No, tingnan ninyo. The Philippines fought with steel nerves. When we say steel nerves, we are now using some sort of figures of speech and refused to be crushed by a giant. Okay? So this is now applying the specialized vocabulary for a sports news on the lead. Okay. The two are classic examples of the 5 Ws and 1 H lead. So this is a starting point for those who are viewing right now and for those advisors who are still learning the ropes on how to become a good advisor in writing sports stories. Ito po yung mga bagay na dapat nating tinitingnan, lalo na sa pagsulat ng first paragraph ng ating sports story na tinatawag nating lead. Now we proceed to writing the body. So after the lead comes the body, composed of the other elements arranged in descending order or decreasing importance. If it were a basketball story, report it quarter by quarter. If a volleyball story, set by set of frame by frame. If a softball or baseball story, inning by inning. If boxing, round by round, etc. in a narrative form. Meaning to say, you are going to narrate all the things which happen on the different parts of the game. Yun na yung sinabi ko kanina, no? So, halimbawa, in the basketball game, ano bang mga nangyayari during the first quarter na hindi nangyayari during the second quarter. So these are the things that a sports writer must be very, very keen in looking at para mas makita, no, mas malahad pa niya kung paano ginawa ng mga athletes ang kanilang mga tasks. So you have to follow these with their respective scores. So therefore, halimbawa, sa first quarter, anong nangyari during that time? What is the score? Parang ganyan na talaga. Second quarter, anong highlight and sidelights doon? At ilalagay mo kaagad din ang score during that particular quarter. These things are very important for the viewers or the listeners or even the readers could see kung ano ang movement ng mga atleta during that time. Okay? So, drastic ba ang change ng kanilang defense? Ano bang ginawa ng mga atleta para nakuha nila yung score, no, from a very, very long way? Bakit nagiging ganon yung score nila? Okay? So these are the things that we need to consider, especially in writing the body. The body of your story should basically elaborate the lead. If your lead was about the bench warmer becoming the game star, then the body should go into more detail about that. Yun na yung sinabi ko kanina na hero of the game, no? Bench warmer siya, but all of a sudden, nagiging game stars siya. Okay, nagiging star siya ng game kasi meron siyang ginawa na nakapagpanalo sa kanilang group or sa kanilang team. Often, a simple chronological account works best. So therefore, this particular part of writing the lead is going to support the body, is going to support the lead. So this is a very important thing, no? Yung elements ng writing, yung sinasabi ng ating ibang mga speakers, lalo na sa feature writing at sa editorial writing, yung mga elements ng writing, ng coherence, ganun dapat coherent yung ano natin. Oo. Coherent ang ating pagkalahad, na hindi na parang sabog yung ano natin, yung article natin. Okay? So, here is an example of a body. Kanina, naglahad tayo ng isang example ng lead. Okay, so I'd like to read that. Carmelo's ankle was sprained when he was sacked in the first quarter. Reyes came into the game with low expectations but threw his first touchdown pass in the second quarter with a high floating ball that receiver Mike Cruz snagged in the end zone. In the third quarter, Reyes was forced to scramble out of the pocket to avoid the rush but managed to fire a bullet to receiver Dennis Wahing, whom made a diving catch at the goal line. So as you could see, we are again using some sort of an specialized vocabulary, no? Yung parang nagbibigay ng parang lakas at nagbibigay ng parang action. So nakikita ninyo na sinulat dito ang dalawang quarters. And you were able to see how the players was being sacked in the first quarter. How the player threw his first touchdown pass. Okay, high floating ball. So these are specialized vocabulary. On the third quarter naman, inilahad dito, no? Scramble out of pocket. Scramble out of the pocket to avoid the rush, but manage to fire a bullet throw. Okay? Bullet throw. So you could just imagine how the ball is being likened to a bullet. So, yun ang parang ma-feel ng isang reader. So, this is a classic example of the body of a sports story. Okay. So, after that, of course, after discussing the play-by-play part of the game, you need to wrap it up. So, at the end part, gano'n naman talaga ang ating articles, no? Meron tayong introduction, meron tayong body, at meron tayong conclusion. Parang ganyan. So, in this part, we consider that as a wrap-up. So an example of that is this. I knew Lindman could play, but I didn't know he could play like that, said Gladiators coach Jeff Michelson. That was one heck of a game by a young guy who showed a lot of heart. So as you could see, on this part, we are now using quotations coming from the coach. So, a while ago, I was discussing to you how important it is to interview the different athletes and different coaches for us to be able to integrate how they feel or how they find the game, the preceding game about the things which happen. So nakikita ninyo sa example na ito, na kinukote natin na hindi nag-expect yung isang coach, no, yung Gladiators coach, kung paano piniplay ni Lindman. Parang hindi niya na-expect na ganun pala ang gawin ng isang atleta. Okay, Washington said Lindman exuded confidence even in the huddle before his very first snap. He just said, "Let's do this to win," Washington said. And he went out there and he did it. That boy can throw the ball. So by doing so, you are adding some sort of a live action to your story. So this is how the sports story must be presented. No, starting from the lead, where you're going to present the 5 W's and 1 H in a very, very different way kasi meron tayong lingo na ginagamit or sports lingo na ginagamit. And on the body, meron ding tinatawag nating play-by-play on the different parts of the game, on the different quarters. If it is a basketball, sinabi ko na yun kanina, or kung anong mang laro iyon. Okay, so we also have the wrap-up or the closing part where we are going to quote the coaches and even the players. Okay, so now I'm going to zero in into the importance of the sports lingo. So we have list of sports terminologies online. If you're a beginning sports writer, you need to go online or look for a book where you could see all the different terminologies or different lingos on the different sports. An example for basketball. So common, we could hear about foul or technical foul. So for football, we have kick. For badminton, we have smash, no? Marinig natin yung badminton terminology na iyon. For baseball, we have throw, we have strike. So there is a tendency that your article is going to become better if the technical aspect or the terminology of that particular sports is being mastered by you. So therefore, as a budding journalist, specifically as a sports writer, you need to borrow your nose, no? Kailangan ibaon ninyo ang mga ilong ninyo towards these terminologies. Try to go online. These terminologies are available online. Just look for reliable sources kasi hindi naman lahat ng mga nakikita natin online is true, no? Kailangan nating makikita nanggagaling yan dapat sa reliable sources. Okay, an example to that is for golf. We have eagle, bogey, birdie, 18 holes. So these are terminologies on golf. For boxing, we have knockout, jab, hook, clinch, technical knockout, uppercut, right cross, ducking, sleeping, hitting below the belt. These are terminologies or lingos. For basketball, we have field goal, foul, quintet, alley hop, and dunk. So these are terminologies for basketball. For bowling, 10-pin, frame, bowler, spare, strike, and many things more. And for volleyball, we have toss, spike, net, and many things. Okay? So there are also common sports phrases which sometimes are used in business, but these are actually phrases. Example, pull your own weight. This is for rowing. We also ballpark figures in baseball, grand slam or slam dunk. Of course, we know that this is from basketball. Out of left field from baseball, call an audible, and many things more. Nakikita naman ninyo sa screen ninyo kung ano yung mga ginagamit natin sa business, but basically, these are phrases used in sports. So these phrases must be analyzed and must be understood by a sports writer for you to be able to understand how to integrate them into your copy or into your article. Okay? So yun talaga ang ini-underscore ko, that we have to use and utilize the sports lingo for us to be able to make the copy or the article a better one. Okay. So there are many types of sports news writing that is offered around the world every day. We have merely showed you its simplest form. Certainly, it is a rewarding form of news writing for journalists who love their sport, and the structure they use allow them to adapt their skills to any type of journalism writing. Okay, before finalizing the sports story, meron dapat tayong template o tinitingnan na parang rubric for us to be able to understand whether the copy that we are writing is good. No? Parang meron tayong criteria for us to be able to know and to see whether we are doing it well. Okay, kung titingnan natin sa sports writing rubric, ito yung requirement. Number 1, meron ba tayong effective lead? Summary style ba siya? 5 Ws and 1 H. So by doing so, i-score ninyo ang article ninyo into 10. No? Kapag nakuha mo ang 10 na iyon, effective yung lead mo. And then we have 6 to 8 interview questions that don't allow for pat answers. If you could interview coach, players, what would you ask him or her? This is also 10 points. Example, kung nagsusulat ka ng isang sports article at parang wala kang nakuhang quote coming from a coach or an athlete, parang hindi siya maganda. So, dapat meron yon kasi 10 points yun siya. No cliches or sports jargon used. Use fresh, lively language, 10 points. When we say sports jargons, communication is being used for us to communicate to the reader or to the viewer or to the listener properly what transpired. We could avoid a lot of jargons or too technical terms na hindi masyadong naintindihan ng ating mga manunood or nakikinig or mambabasa. Dapat ganun yon. Okay? You could also score 10 points on that. So, when you review the sports copy that you've written, titingnan mo kung meron bang cliche. Ano ba tong mga cliche na to? Yung parang trivia na, bakit mo sinusulat pa yan na parang hindi naman siya interesting? Okay? So, also, you need to understand if these things are factual or based on facts. Kasi, hindi po journalism ang isang bagay kapag fiction siya. It's another story kung gawa-gawa mo lang ang mga nangyari. So, ibig sabihin, you need to use factual data in order for you to consider your sports story. And that is 10 points ang ilalagay mo sa rubric mo or sa copy mo. This is rubric actually. So, a total of 40 points. So, alam naman natin kung anong passing, di ba? So, around 38 o ganon. So, kung nakuha mo ang score na 38, you would be able to say that your sports copy is an acceptable one. Okay? So, I'd like the advisors to take a screenshot or you could picture or you could take a picture on this slide for you to be able to utilize this rubric in times when your journalist is going to write a sports story. But then again, for you naman, budding journalist, huwag nyo nang antayin ang mga advisors ninyo. Make sure na meron kayong sinusunod na parang criteria for you to be able to judge your own copy, for you to be able to judge your own article. No? By doing so, you would be satisfied by your work. Of course, this is going to be anchored with what we call as facts. So then again, I'm about to wrap up the discussion that I was presenting to you. We already defined what is sports writing. We already discussed the nitty-gritty on the different parts of the sports story, on how to write the lead, on how to write the body, on how to wrap it up or the conclusion of that particular thing. And we also looked into some examples for us to be able to appreciate how a sports story is being presented. And we utilized a rubric for us to be able to judge our own copy. So these are things that is going to be considered by the writers and even the advisors for you to be able to train the journalist into becoming a better writer. So by doing so, we could consider this activity or this part of the journalism journey as an interesting one. Since this is all about gender and development as well, wag na po nating ipapasok sa ating mga isip na ang mga lalaki lang ang magandang magsulat ng sports, no? For gender and development, alam naman natin na both men and women are capable of appreciating sports. And because of that, we consider whoever is interested could write a sports news. Now, some tips before I'm going to go, no? Kasi parang hindi pa na-consume yung 1 hour. So, I'd like the advisors to understand that you could not just pinpoint somebody to write a sports article. Alam nyo, masyadong mahirap, di ba? Sinabi ko na kanina na dapat alam niya ang sports lingo. Alam niya ang special vocabulary sa sports na iyon. So therefore, look for somebody who's very interested on a certain sport. Because if he or she is very interested on that, may tendency na madali lang niyang malaman ang mga bagay-bagay na ito. Another, expose your sports journalist to different sports articles, no? Dapat magbabasa sila. You could go online, they could go online and read sports articles, not just local but also international, para makikita nila ang iba't ibang uri at iba't ibang estilo ng pagsusulat ng esports, no? Another, we could expose them to a real life event. Kapag merong mga nangyari, although we still have restrictions, meron naman tayong cable TV or meron tayong tinatawag na internet-based TV. So makikita natin ang mga laro sa kasalukuyan. Ano bang present na mga laro ngayon? Expose the students to that and allow them to write data about it or gather data about it and eventually allow them to write. Okay. Aside from that, make sure that both in English and Filipino, ang syntax nila, pati na yung grammar nila, ay tama naman. Yung mga punctuations, yung how to capitalize the words, dapat basic iyon, no? Ang dami-daming mga nag-join ng sports writing event na automatically, kahit maganda yung ano nila, yung maganda yung mga pinagsusulat nila, automatically kina-crush out yun ng judge kasi yung basic rules ng writing ay hindi pina-follow ng mga bata, no? Hindi nag-punctuation ng tama, hindi nag-indent, hindi nag-capitalize ng proper nouns, and etc. These are things that we need to understand. Lalo na kung pangalan, dapat nakakapital yun. But these students are already writing things na parang naano na nila, no? Nakuha nila galing sa pagsusulat at pag-blog sa internet. Okay? Pag-update ng kanilang mga timelines na nilalagyan na nila ng mga maraming mga emoticons and etc. Pati na nga yung mga ano ulit yun parang exclamation points. Ginagamitan nila ng around 8 exclamation points. Isa rules naman, isa lang naman yun eh. So, these are the things that we need to understand. Okay? So, to sum it up, sports writing is a very specialized news story because you are going to use sports lingo and you are going to use specialized vocabulary. It takes interest for the writer to be able to write a very good copy. It takes a very good dedication for the teacher advisor to be able to come up with a coaching and a mentoring technique for him or her to be able to motivate the child or the student to write very good copies. And with that, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. I hope that you understand something out from this, even virtually. And I hope I'm looking forward for the different activities on the contest proper for us to be able to develop the budding journalists in our division. By doing so, we might produce a lot more of newscasters, news writers, photojournalists, and many things more which are related to journalism. Again, good day and thank you.